I've always believed that loyalty meant something. That if you showed up early, stayed late, kept your head down and your heart in it, people would notice. That family, especially, would notice. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. I remember the hum of the fluorescent lights above the front desk, the way the fresh flowers on the counter smelled faintly of lilies, my mother's favorite. I had just refilled the lobby candy bowl and was checking the conference schedule when the glass doors opened, and my father stepped out with the board trailing behind him. "Mia," he said, his voice sharp and flat like he was chewing nails. "Conference room A now." I froze. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a sentence. Just an order. I glanced at the calendar. There wasn't a meeting with me on the schedule. The boardroom was full. Every executive was seated, including my older brother, Mark, who gave me a quick smirk before looking away. I took the only empty chair, at the far end, opposite my father. He didn't wait. "We've been reviewing company structure," he began, standing like he was addressing strangers instead of his own daughter. "It's time we make some hard decisions. Mia." He looked straight at me. "Your position has been reevaluated." I blinked. I don't understand. "You're a receptionist," he said. "You greet clients, answer phones. That's not a strategic role. We need professionals running this place. Family or not, I don't care." The room was silent for a second, like even the air had stopped moving. And then someone chuckled. Then another. I think it was one of the financial officers. I couldn't tell. My vision blurred for a second. They were laughing. At me. "I've been here for 7 years," I said quietly, barely able to steady my voice. "I've done everything you've ever asked. I know every client, every internal process, every system update. I trained half the staff sitting at this table." "That's not the point," he snapped. "You're not qualified for anything beyond the front desk. That's where we started you, and that's where it ends. We're restructuring. You'll be leaving by the end of the week. HR has your exit paperwork." The words didn't make sense. Not right away. My body heard them before my mind did. Leaving? Exit paperwork? I looked around the table. No one met my eyes. Not even Mark. Especially not Mark. And just like that, my father turned his back to me and kept speaking. To them. Like I wasn't even there anymore. "Let's move on. Next topic. Client escalation protocols." I sat still for a full minute after he spoke, trying to breathe without shaking. But my hands trembled. My chest burned. I stood up. Quietly. Slowly. My chair barely made a sound. And then, just as I reached the door to leave, those same glass doors opened again. A man in a navy suit stepped inside the boardroom like he owned the air around him. It was Mr. Howard, CEO of Garnett and Rowe, our biggest client. A man who never came to our office without an appointment. A man my father had spent years trying to impress. He walked past the boardroom table like none of them existed. Then he stopped. "Where's Mia?" he asked. No one answered. He looked around again. "Is she in the lobby?" I turned, stunned. He saw me and his face lit up. "Mia, there you are." He walked up, took my hand. "I've been calling your direct line all morning. I wanted to thank you in person for fixing the delivery issue last week. Saved us 6 figures. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My father stared at us, pale as the marble conference table. Mark looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. "I told your dad last month," Mr. Howard continued, addressing the room now. "This company runs on its relationships. And this woman," he pointed to me, "is the only reason we're still doing business with you. Just thought it was time someone said it out loud." No one laughed now. I looked at my father. His mouth was tight, his knuckles white against the edge of the table. He didn't say a word. And in that silence, I realized something. I had spent years trying to prove I was valuable. But maybe I'd never needed to prove anything at all. Not to him. Not anymore. I didn't say anything as Mr. Howard left the room. He gave me a nod, a kind smile, and a final firm handshake before turning and walking back through the same glass doors he came in from. The boardroom was silent in his wake. I stood there, unsure what to do next. Half of me expected someone, anyone, to speak, to apologize, to backtrack and admit that maybe I wasn't just a receptionist after all. But no one moved, not even my father. He sat there stiffly, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the polished table like it would offer him a script. Maybe something to say to fix what had just unraveled in front of all of us. But there was nothing. So I turned, walked out the door, and back to the reception desk. For what I thought might be the last time, I sat down in my chair, the same chair I'd used for 7 years, and stared at my reflection in the black screen of the idle computer monitor. Behind me, I could hear the muffled voices rising inside the boardroom again. My father's voice sharp, Mark's defensive. Words I couldn't make out. But I didn't need to hear the details. I already knew what they were talking about. Me. By the end of the day, the whole office had heard. The whispers started slowly. A coworker who used to avoid eye contact suddenly offered me coffee. One of the junior analysts, Leah, popped by to say hi and nervously asked if what happened in the boardroom was true. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. People don't ask those kinds of questions unless they already know the answer. That evening, I left exactly at 5. No overtime. No last-minute email checks. No updating the call logs or refiling contracts. Just me, walking out into the cool autumn air with my bag over my shoulder, feeling the sting of betrayal sharp in my chest. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the edge of the city, parked near the old coffee shop I used to frequent when I was fresh out of school, and sat in the car with the engine off. The parking lot was mostly empty. The windows fogged as I sat there, staring at the dashboard, running everything through my head over and over. What had I done wrong? Had I pushed too hard to be seen? Had I made myself too available, too useful, to the point where they forgot I was more than the role I played? Or maybe, just maybe, they had never really seen me at all. A knock on my window startled me. It was Leah, the analyst from earlier. She held 2 to-go coffee cups in her hands. I took a chance, she said with a nervous smile. Thought maybe this is where you'd be. I rolled down the window slowly. How did you know? You talk about this place a lot, she said, especially when things get hard. I opened the door, stepped out, and accepted the coffee. We leaned against the car, not saying anything for a long time. Then she spoke. Everyone's talking about what Mr. Howard said today, she said. They're not laughing anymore. I nodded slightly. Too late for that. No, she said. It's not for you. She handed me a napkin. On it, scribbled in blue pen, were a list of names, 8 or 9 coworkers. They want to help, she said. You've been helping everyone else for years, keeping things together behind the scenes. They remember that. I looked at the names. People from sales, from tech support, even someone from HR. I folded the napkin carefully and tucked it into my coat pocket. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. They might have stripped me of a title, but they hadn't taken my value. And I wasn't going to walk out with my head down. Not yet. Not without making sure everyone in that office knew exactly who they'd tried to erase. Because respect isn't something you're handed. It's something you demand. And I was done being silent. By Wednesday morning, I noticed the shift. It wasn't obvious. Not at first. But it was there. A pause in conversations when I walked by. Longer than usual glances from coworkers who used to barely notice me. A nod from the CFO, Mr. Lambert, who usually only acknowledged the executives. Something was different. I sat at my desk. Still technically the receptionist. Still answering phones. But I had stopped pretending. I didn't force a smile. I didn't laugh at bad jokes or fetch last-minute copies for meetings I wasn't invited to. I did my job. Efficiently. Calmly. like someone who already knew something no one else did, because I did. Mr. Howard's visit had cracked something open, not just in my father, but in the company. Word spread fast, faster than even I had expected, and not just inside our walls. Clients started calling, asking for me by name. It started with an email from our logistics partner, Amir, in Dubai. Then another from Clara in Chicago. Then a call from a senior rep at Rowan Financial. All with the same request. Can we speak to Mia? Apparently, I was no longer just the person who greeted them. I was the person they trusted. The one who solved things. The one who remembered birthdays and noticed when someone sounded tired on the phone. The one who never needed credit to do the work. Until now. I didn't say much, even as I forwarded messages and patched calls to the right departments. I let the evidence speak for itself. Every time someone bypassed a department head to speak to me, another crack formed in the glass palace my father had built around his executives. By Thursday, my brother Mark cornered me near the break room. "You need to stop making this a thing," he said under his breath. I stared at him, slowly sipping my tea. "Making what a thing?" He lowered his voice even more. "You know exactly what I mean. Clients going around the chain of command, people gossiping. Dad's furious. Maybe he should have read the room before firing me in front of the board," I replied coolly. Mark leaned closer. He made a decision. "We're restructuring. That's business." "No," I said, steady and quiet. "That's ego." He scoffed and walked away. But his shoulders were stiff, his steps quicker than usual. He wasn't just angry. He was nervous. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Mr. Howard's office. His assistant, Mara, sounded hesitant. "Mia, he'd like to invite you to the quarterly leadership dinner. It's this Friday, private event, just partners and senior contacts." I paused. "I'm not a senior anything." She laughed softly. "You are to him." That night, I sat with the invitation in my hands, heart thudding in my chest. This wasn't just a social dinner. It was a message. Mr. Howard was making it known. I mattered. I debated telling someone. I even opened a message draft to my father, then closed it. Let him find out the way I had found out I was being let go, in a room full of people who were watching. Friday came faster than expected. I took the day off, claiming a personal errand. No one questioned it. And at 7 p.m., I walked into the glass-walled restaurant overlooking the bay in a black dress, hair pinned up, wearing confidence like armor. Mr. Howard greeted me with genuine warmth. "I meant what I said the other day," he told me as we sat. "You've been the most consistent, most competent person we've dealt with here. If this company can't see that, it's not your failure. It's theirs." I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. "Thank you." He leaned in, voice low. "Off the record, how much do you want to stay there?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I didn't answer right away, because the truth was, I didn't know. Part of me wanted to walk away, build something new. But another part, the part that had spent years laying the foundation of this place, wanted to be there when the walls cracked. "I'm not done yet," I said finally. He nodded. "Good. Because I might need your help." That night, as I drove home, headlights streaking across the windshield, I felt it. The shift. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was preparing. The tide was turning, and they had no idea what was coming next. By Monday morning, I wasn't just the receptionist anymore. Not to the staff, not to the clients, and certainly not to my father. But the funny thing about power is, once people sense you have it, they either try to align with you or quietly prepare to take it from you. I saw it in the small ways first. A printed meeting agenda, normally placed directly into the executive's hands, was now also being accidentally left on my desk. A few department heads started asking for my input on client communications, framing it as curiosity, but I could tell they were feeling me out. Even Mark stopped by the front desk with a fake friendly smile and a forced, "Hey Mia, everything okay this week?" I knew what he was really asking. "Are you planning something?" And the answer was absolutely. Mr. Howard and I had spoken again, this time more directly. His company was planning a joint venture with ours, a high-stakes collaboration that would open doors to international partnerships, the kind of deal that would define reputations, careers. He wanted me involved. They trust you, he said. You're the face they know. Not your brother, not even your father. And that was the moment something crystallized. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. And if the company was going to move forward with integrity, the truth had to come out. Not just about my role, but about how far we'd let ego and legacy override merit. So I started gathering. Quietly. Strategically. I dug up years of correspondence with clients, emails, reports, resolution logs. I compiled every incident where I had stepped in to fix mistakes the executives had buried. I documented last-minute saves, client crises I de-escalated, even holiday coverage when no one else showed up. It wasn't just a paper trail. It was a story. One they couldn't rewrite. Then I had lunch with Denise. She'd been in marketing for years and knew more than most. She'd always been kind, but careful. Never too outspoken, never too involved. Until now. I've got something you should see, she said, sliding a flash drive across the table. What is it? I asked, my voice low. She glanced around. Meeting minutes, internal memos, stuff I was asked to delete. I blinked. Why didn't you? She smiled. Because I've been underestimated too. That afternoon I stayed late. Everyone else had cleared out. The lights dimmed except for the glow from my monitor. I plugged in the drive and opened the files. And there it was. Emails between Mark and my father discussing optics and phasing Mia out. Phrases like, keep her out of the loop, and she's too visible. Clients are starting to notice. But the most damning? A strategy memo drafted by Mark suggesting they absorb Mia's responsibilities gradually and present her removal as a role realignment. It had a timestamp from 2 weeks before the board meeting where I was blindsided. I leaned back in my chair, the silence of the empty office pressing in around me. They hadn't just dismissed me. They had planned it, like a quiet execution behind polished doors. And yet, they forgot one crucial thing. You don't erase someone who's been the backbone of your business for nearly a decade, not without leaving a trail. The next morning, I made copies, one for myself, one for Mr. Howard, and one, sealed in an envelope, for someone who might need it later. Then I walked into the office like nothing had changed, but everything had. At 10 a.m., my father called a leadership meeting. He hadn't held one since the day he let me go. I wasn't invited, but I knew the agenda before anyone told me. Rumor was the joint venture with Garnett and Rowe had stalled. Mr. Howard wasn't moving forward until he had confirmation of leadership stability. That confirmation was me. They just didn't know it yet. I watched from the glass wall outside the conference room. Mark pacing. My father tapping his pen like a drumbeat of denial. The other executives seated stiffly, some whispering. And then Mr. Howard arrived. He walked in with his usual calm presence and a briefcase in hand. But this time, he wasn't alone. I waited 30 seconds, then opened the door and stepped inside. The room fell silent. Mr. Howard smiled slightly and gestured to the chair beside him. Mia, please join us. My father's eyes narrowed. She's not on the leadership team. Mr. Howard didn't flinch. She is now. I sat down, not just to take a seat, but to take back my voice. Because this was no longer about titles. It was about truth, and I had it in spades. The moment I sat beside Mr. Howard, I felt the room tilt. Not physically, but perceptually. All the old dynamics, the unspoken hierarchy, the way everyone deferred to my father or looked to Mark for approval, shifted. Suddenly, people didn't know where to look, or who held the real power in that room. I didn't say anything, not at first. I let the silence speak for me. Mr. Howard began the meeting with his usual composed tone, but there was steel behind his words. Before we discuss next steps in the joint venture, I want to address something more fundamental. Trust. That word hit the room like a dropped hammer. He looked around the table. Over the past year, I've watched how this company operates. I've observed your client relationships, your leadership structure, and your internal dynamics. And frankly, I've grown concerned. My father stiffened. With all due respect, I'm not sure this is the place. No, Mr. Howard said sharply, turning to him. This is exactly the place. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder, the same one I had given him that morning. I've reviewed documentation that paints a troubling picture, a deliberate effort to marginalize one of your most capable employees, an employee who, by all accounts, is responsible for holding together several of your largest accounts, including mine. He opened the folder and slid it across the table to my father. My father didn't touch it. Mark shifted in his seat, color draining from his face. This is absurd, my father said finally. Mia was a receptionist. We gave her a job. She was never what? I cut in quietly. Never qualified? Never supposed to be more than the girl who smiled at the front desk and kept your calendar in check? He turned to me, surprised by the interruption, but I didn't back down. Do you know how many times I cleaned up after your mistakes, Dad? My voice stayed calm even. How many clients I saved when Mark missed a deadline or someone sent the wrong proposal or forgot a name on a conference call? The room stayed quiet. I didn't do it for applause, I continued. But I also didn't do it to be erased. Across the table, Denise gave the smallest nod. Quiet support. Mr. Howard leaned forward. Let me be clear. My company will not move forward with any deal unless Mia is involved in a senior capacity. Period. She's not a receptionist. She's the reason you've kept us this long. The weight of his words hung in the air. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, and if she leaves, we go with her. My father's jaw tensed. You're letting personal bias cloud business. No, Mr. Howard said. You did. Silence. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then slowly, my father reached for the folder, flipped it open. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. And I watched it happen. The realization that this wasn't just an embarrassing moment. This was evidence. This was exposure. And it was signed, dated, and traceable. When he looked up again, his face was pale. Mia, he said, voice low, why didn't you come to me directly? I did, I said, for 7 years. And for the first time in my life, he had no response. After the meeting, people avoided my gaze. Not out of contempt, but out of shame. Some looked like they wanted to say something. Apologize, maybe. Others just stayed quiet, unsure how to face the truth that had just been dragged out into the fluorescent light. Mark didn't say a word. He followed my father out of the conference room, head down, hands clenched. I stayed behind. Mr. Howard turned to me as the room emptied. You handled that with grace, he said. I shook my head. I handled it with facts. He smiled. Same thing, in your case. As I walked back through the office, I passed my old desk. Someone else was sitting there now. A temp, probably. She gave me a small wave, clearly unsure of who I was or what had just happened. I nodded politely and kept walking. I didn't need the desk anymore. I had earned a seat at the table. It's strange how quickly things can change. 1 week after that boardroom meeting, my name was printed on a new office door. Client strategy lead. No more front desk. No more just a receptionist. I had an actual team now. A real title. A seat at executive meetings where people didn't just listen to me. They asked for my input. But the title wasn't what mattered most. It was the shift in how I saw myself. For years, I'd bought into the idea that I had to prove I belonged. That I had to work twice as hard just to be taken half as seriously. But I'd done all that. I'd over-delivered, stayed late, fixed other people's failures. And still, I was thrown aside like I was invisible. Now, I knew better. Respect isn't given for loyalty alone. It's demanded with boundaries, and I had finally learned how to draw mine. Still, things weren't exactly smooth after the storm. There were ripples. My father didn't speak to me much in the days that followed. We crossed paths a few times, at meetings in the hallway, but his words were clipped, his tone professional. Not cold, just distant. Like he didn't quite know what to make of me anymore. Mark didn't come back at all. By the end of the week, a formal email went out. Mark Langston will be stepping down from his role as vice president, effective immediately. There was no explanation. No farewell party. No statement from my father. Just a quiet, strategic exit. Rumor was Mark had been given a choice: resign quietly or face an internal investigation. Given the paper trail I'd handed over, the choice wasn't hard to guess. I didn't feel triumphant when I read that email. I felt steady. That's the only word I can use to describe it. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about clarity. The following Monday, I was invited to join a roundtable discussion with Mr. Howard and other key partners. It was the kind of meeting I never even knew existed until now. The kind where decisions were made before the rest of the company was even briefed. The kind of meeting I used to be told was above my pay grade. And now, I was in the room. Not because of politics, but because of proof. Afterward, I returned to my office and found an envelope on my desk. No name. Just the words, "For Mia," written in pen I recognized instantly. My father's handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a note, handwritten. No company letterhead. "Mia, you've always had more strength than I knew how to handle. I see that now. You didn't just earn your place. You defended it, even when I made it impossible. That kind of resilience, I didn't teach you that. You taught it to yourself. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm proud of you. Dad." I read it 3 times before setting it down. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase what he'd done. But it was a beginning. A quiet acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to change too. That night, I stayed late. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I walked the quiet halls of the office I'd once called a second home. I passed the lobby, the break room, the old desk where I'd spent so many years keeping things running without recognition. And I realized something important. We don't just inherit legacies. We redefine them. My father built this company with discipline and drive. But I was helping rebuild it with something just as vital: dignity. That was the real transformation. A week later, I launched a mentorship program for junior staff, especially women and entry-level employees who often got overlooked. We called it Frontline to Future. It gave people the space to grow, to be seen before they had to fight for it. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving the system. I was changing it. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was proud, not because I had finally been given power, but because I'd learned I didn't need anyone's permission to claim it. In the end, it wasn't the title on my door or the seat at the table that mattered most. It was the voice I had reclaimed, and the courage to use it. And that, I realized, was the legacy I wanted to leave behind. Not just for me, but for everyone who had ever been told they were just anything.